All right, good evening, everybody. It's your boy Akeem from Pro Football Exclusive, here to finally start off my recaps for the 2014 NFL Draft. Here to talk about all the teams in their grades for their selections, and I have to say that I'm not too disappointed in any of the teams for their picks in this year's draft. I believe that everybody should give the teams respect and some credit for their selections. I think all the teams did a pretty good job, and I do not have one grade lower than a C+ for each of these teams. No, not one grade lower than a C+, and I know that some people might disagree with me, but I'm not disappointed. There were really no losers in this year's draft. I think all the teams, respectively, I think that because of the directions each team are going, I understand why they selected the players that they did select. So I think I have to give a little bit of kudos for all these teams. Not one grade lower than a C+ in my opinion. Now for today's blog, I'm going to kick things off with the NFC West division. Starting with the Arizona Cardinals, I think they had a solid draft. Starting with their first round pick, Deion Buchanan out of Washington State. Now I think he'll become the next Aeneas Williams, who is making it to Canton this upcoming year. A good Hall of Famer, started his career as an Arizona Cardinal, and I think that Deion Buchanan can do the same thing. I think he's going to definitely support the run, at least get 70 tackles this upcoming season, cause some pass breakups, disrupt the quarterback, understanding how to read the quarterback, even commit some turnovers. And I even have him as my defensive rookie of the year this season. He is my pick at DROY, defensive rookie of the year. With their second round pick, it's a little bit of a confusion pick for me. Troy Nicholas out of Notre Dame. Now he is a talented tight end, but they still had a rookie of Rob Hauser, who had 454 yards but only one touchdown last season, and they signed John Carlson from the Minnesota Vikings. So that's a little bit of a confusion for me, but I still think he's a good, talented receiver who's going to be in good competition between Hauser, Carlson, and Nicholas. In the third round, they picked up a good pass rusher from North Carolina who could bring some youth in that defensive line, and Kareem Martin, who had double-digit sacks last season. And sticking with the third round, they picked up a good receiver out of Pittsburgh State, John Brown. Now he would definitely try to see if he could fill in that void as a slot receiver to replace Andre Roberts, who's a little bit of a disappointment. Robert is now a Washington Redskins, and I think this is a clear opportunity for John Brown to be that slot receiver, the number 3 receiver behind Larry Fitzgerald and Michael Floyd. In the fourth round, they finally went with a quarterback and Logan Thomas out of Virginia Tech. Now this was a little bit of a scare for me because he was a little bit of a disappointment. He only completed 55% passes and throughout his career, which is a major concern. But he has the prototypical look that you want at a quarterback at 6'5", 250 pounds, and he does have a strong arm, but he's not accurate, and he struggled a lot for the past 2 seasons. Now back in 2011, that was his breakthrough year. A lot of people even saw him as a first-round draft choice, but his stock dropped a lot drastically. But because of his size and his look, I understand why the Arizona Cardinals went with him as hopefully the future quarterback as a competition to success over Carson Palmer. Now in the fifth round, they had a little bit of a player I did not really agree with, Stinson, the defensive end out of Alabama. Throughout his career, he only had 95 tackles, 15.5 tackles for loss, and only 5.5 sacks. I don't really think he's going to be as much of a factor on that defensive side. And with their final pick, they went with Walt Powell, the wide receiver out of Murray State. He's going to try to fight his way off to make the team, to still have a lot of young players. Yeah, I think he's going to probably end up being a special team player, if not at best a practice squad player. Hopefully he can try to bring his way up. I don't really see him making the 53-man roster. Now, overall for this team, I have to give him a solid B. I think they did a good job overall, especially with the pick with Deion Buchanan to help out Tyrann Mathieu, who's coming off of a knee injury, and he still had a good, decent rookie season. And let's not forget about Patrick Peterson. I think this could be a good young secondary for the Arizona Cardinals, and I think teams in the NFC West are going to have to watch out for this defense. Next team we need to talk about, my San Francisco 49ers. Now, at first, I was really squinching my eyes like you see right now with their selections, but they had 12 picks in this year's draft, and I was really not feeling things at first, but when I took a look at it, I think they had a good, solid draft, and I understand the direction that they want to do with their picks. Starting with their first pick, Jimmy Ward, the safety out of Northern Illinois. He's a great player, and he is a first-round worthy type player, but I thought they should have went with a cornerback with this one, and then Bradley Roby out of Ohio State was still available, but they decided to pass on him, and then the Denver Broncos picked him up at pick number 31 of the first round. Now, at first I was a little bit confused because they did sign Antoine Bethea to a multi-year contract, and Eric Reed, a rookie last season, made it to the Pro Bowl, so I didn't really understand why they decided to go with Jimmy Ward. And I talked to one of my boys, Sam Cherry, my bro from back in the day, back at Westfield State College. He was one of my teammates, great guy. He kind of explained things to me that they're probably looking for to having a young safety, a young secondary to get some youth at safety and great talented players, and have Eric Reed as well as Jimmy Ward work well together. And I kind of understand his point, and I have to give him some kudos for that. Shout out to my man Sam Cherry, you my man, dog. And I also I thought they could have went with a cornerback, but Tremaine Brock did lead the team with 5 interceptions last season, so I kind of understand they decided to boost up the depth at safety with Jimmy Ward. With their second pick, I did like this pick a lot. Carlos Hyde out of Ohio State. Now let's not forget, Frank Gore is still the man. I still see him rushing for over 1,000 yards this season, but I don't really know how much is left in the tank, and he is reaching his 9th season, and I think the San Francisco 49ers is going to have to look for their next power back, and this is a great guy. 7.3 yards per carry. Last season, rushed for over 1,500 yards at 230 pounds. Great size, and I think he will be a great replacement for Frank Gore. Now, I know a lot of people might be saying they still have Kendall Hunter and people still have hopes on Marcus Lattimore, but I don't think that Lattimore is going to be that player that we saw as a freshman at South Carolina. I think he's kind of done. I think he could still probably make the team, but I see him as a practice type of guy, but I still have a little bit of hope on him, but I have to go with Carlos Hyde over Marcus Lattimore. And Kendall Hunter, I don't see him as an every down back, but a great complimentary number 2 back, and I think he give you some good tough yardage. In the third round, they picked up a couple good offensive linemen, and Marcus Martin out of USC, the center, as well as Brandon Thomas, the guard coming out of Clemson, to keep the depth chart well in the offensive line. And they picked up another good linebacker in the third round in Chris Borland out of Wisconsin. He had over 400 tackles throughout his career at 5'11", 248 pounds. I think he's a great addition to work with Patrick Willis as well as Navarro Bowman. Picked another good depth player at linebacker, and I think he could be a nasty player working along with Bowman and Willis. I think that was a great pick. In the fourth round, they went with the receiver. I think they should have went with the receiver with Bruce Ellington, receiver out of South Carolina. Now he's going to be competing with John Baldwin and Quentin Payton. Hopefully, between these three particular players, they're going to have to compete for the number 3 receiver behind Anquan Bolden and Michael Crabtree. And let's not forget about Vernon Davis. He is still the man at tight end who will be used as a slot receiver as well. Now, they finally started addressing the cornerback position in the 4th round. Sticking within the 4th round, they went with Dante Johnson, the cornerback out of NC State. He would definitely support the run. His cover skills, not really up to what I'm looking for, but I still think he's a good cornerback who can support the run. And in the 5th round, they picked up Aaron Lynch, the defensive end out of South Florida. Wasn't really feeling that selection. Sticking with the 5th round, they went with another cornerback, Keith Reeser out of Florida, Atlanta. I think he has decent cover skills, but the cornerback that I did like a lot was Kenneth Aker out of SMU. 25 pass breakups for the past 2 seasons. I think between him, Johnson, and Reeser, they're going to be fighting for a starting slot because Chris Culver has been getting in a lot of trouble, and the Niners are not really feeling him too much. In the 7th round, they went with Caleb Ramsey out of Boston College at defensive tackle. I'm not really feeling that pick, but in the final pick, they went with a good fullback and Trey Miller out of Oklahoma, coming back from injury, but I think he's a better versatile all-purpose fullback compared to Bruce Miller. Now, Bruce Miller, I'm not doubting him. He's a great blocking fullback, had over 250 yards receiving last season, but he is not a true fullback. He was actually a defensive end from UCF, Central Florida, and who converted to a fullback fullback, and he's doing a great job. I still think it's going to be between him and Miller, but between blocking technique, Miller is definitely the better blocker in my personal opinion compared to Trey Miller. Trey Miller is used more for all purpose and carrying the football. I think that he's better than Bruce Miller at that. But as far as blocking, Miller is the guy. I think he's probably going to start over on Trey Miller at the fullback position. And then during this offseason, they picked up Shane Scove, the linebacker out of Stanford. I think that was Shane Scove. I think that was a decent pickup as a free agency at the end of the draft. So overall for this team, I'm going to have to give them a great B+, not an A- or an A, but a B+ for their selections. A little bit confused with the I thought they could have went with Bradley Roby with that first pick, but I do understand, according to Sam Cherry, I do understand why they went with Jimmy Ward with that selection. So I'm going to have to give them a great B+. Good job overall with 12 picks. Sticking with NFC West, St. Louis is the next team we need to talk about. I think they had an outstanding draft, especially with their first 4 selections. Starting with the first 2 picks in the first round, they went with Greg Robinson out of Auburn, the best offensive tackle headed towards this year's draft, and he would definitely help out Zach Stacy in the run game. Sticking with the first round with the 13th overall selection, they went with a defensive tackle, a monster defensive tackle out of Pittsburgh, Aaron Donald, and I think that D-line is pretty set for that D-line for the St. Louis Rams with Chris Long and Robert Quinn at the defensive ends, and then you plugged in Aaron Donald in the center. That is going to be a dangerous defensive line. And in the second round, they picked up a good safety from Florida State, LaMarcus Joyner. Now he's going to be competing with TJ McDonald, or working together with TJ McDonald at the safety position. McDonald still have a little bit of hopes on him, but I think this was a great pick with LaMarcus Joyner to help out that secondary. And in the third round, they picked up a running back from Auburn, the SEC Offensive Player of the Year, Trey Mason. I think this was a good addition, but for fantasy football, I'm a little bit concerned for Zach Stacy because I think Trey Mason is going to be that number 1/number 2, going to be splitting carries with Zach Stacy. But I still think Zach Stacy's the man. I think he should be the starter today. But we will see during this off-season training camp as well as preseason who will be that starting running back. But right now, I still think that Zach Stacy is the man because he already has the NFL experience. But as far as fantasy football points, I'm a little bit concerned because of the addition of Trey Mason, which was still a great pick in the third round. In the fourth round, they picked up a good defensive back from Utah State, Maurice Alexander. I think that was a great selection. Now, the next pick did not come until the 6th round, and I think this was a good steal at the cornerback position in E.J. Gaines out of Mizzou. Now, he had a little bit of a down year this past season, but with his sophomore and junior season, he had over 10 pass breakups for each of those seasons. Sticking with the 6th round, they picked up Garrett Gilbert from my former Texas Longhorns, but then he transferred to SMU and had his best season, 21 touchdown passes and 7 interceptions. I think he will be that backup for Sam Bradford. Now, in the 7th round, they picked up another couple of decent players, but the biggest pick in that 7th round was Michael Sam. Late in the 7th round, finally selected the SEC Defensive Player of the Year, and yes, he deserved to be selected in this year's draft. Now, even though he had a terrible workout, the numbers do not lie with his productivity this past season at Mizzou, and he definitely deserved it, and I think this was boost up the NFL as well as the St. Louis Rams, and Jeff Fisher, he was actually happy to select, and I even saw pictures of Jeff Fisher of his reaction after he selected Sam Bradford. He had a smile on his face, and I'm very proud of Michael Sam with this selection. Now, in the 7th round, they picked up Demetrius Rainey out of Tennessee State in the offensive line to try to address the offensive line. And I forgot to go back to Michael Van Dyke out of the offensive tackle out of Portland State. Now, he's a little bit undersized at 299 pounds, but I still think he has a good size at 6'7". The height is definitely there, but the weight, hopefully he could just bulk up just a little bit. But I still think he's a great player out of Portland State to help address the offensive line. And I think that because of their picks and what they went for after, I think they have some solid picks. I have to give them an A for their efforts for the St. Louis Rams. And last but not least, the Seattle Seahawks, the defending Super Bowl champion. Now, all these teams in the NFC West, I really think they did the worst. But during this offseason and free agent draft signings, I think they did the best in my opinion. But before I talk about the signings, I'm going to talk about who they picked up. Now they did pick a first round pick. They decided to get rid of the 32th overall selection to the Minnesota Vikings and trade with that. So the first pick did not come until the second round, and when they picked up Paul Richardson out of Colorado. I think this was an interesting selection. Now he is a slim guy at 175 pounds, but he had just under 1,300 yards receiving last season and 12 scores. I think this was a pretty good pick and a sleeper in the second round. Now, also in the second round, they had another pick. They went with offensive tackle out of Missouri, Justin Britt. Now, this was a reach. I disagree with this selection. In the fourth round, they picked up a decent defensive end out of UCLA, Cassius Marsh, who had 10.5 tackles for loss in the last season as well as the season before. So that shows he has a little bit of spark in him. He actually had 13 combined sacks for over the past 2 seasons. And then sticking in the fourth round, they went with the receiver out of Alabama, Kevin Norwood. Now, this is another player I kind of disagree with. His best season was his senior season. He did have 7 touchdown receptions, but only 568 yards. Not really feeling this pick. I'm sticking with another fourth round selection, Kevin Pierre Lewis, the outside linebacker out of Boston College. Now I think this is a pretty good pick, to a good addition for that linebacker core with Bobby Wagner leading the way, and I think he will work to teach Kevin Pierre Lewis a little bit something, and I think that Pierre Lewis could be a good backup and even become a good rotation in that linebacking core. And let's not forget about Malcolm Smith, the MVP of this past season's Super Bowl. In the fifth round, they went with Jimmy Stanton, player out of Middle Tennessee State, decent player at defensive tackle. Garrett Scott, this was an interesting pick in the sixth round, offensive tackle out of Marshall. Garrett Scott, 289 pounds at 6'4". I think he's a little bit slim, but he's pretty powerful. I do like this selection. I think this was a little bit of a steal with this pick. And in the seventh round pick, their final selection, they went with Kiro Small, the fullback out of Arkansas. Now he's going to be competing with Michael Robinson, the Pro Bowler at fullback. I think this is Robinson's job, but I still think that Small can do enough to make the team and even help out in special teams. So overall for the pick, I'm a little bit disappointed with the Kevin Norwood as well as the Justin Britt pick. The Britt pick was a little bit of a reach. So for this team, I'm going to have to give them a B-, but like I said, at least a C+ for all these teams, and I have to give the Seattle Seahawks a B-. Now, the next time I'm going to catch you guys is tomorrow. Going to continue things on to talk about the NFC East Division. Thank you for watching today's blog from Pro Football Exclusive. I'm your man, Keem McCall. Be easy.